On this week's show, the Georgia Southern baseball team continues to play well on the road, and the Georgia Southern softball team with the big upset of number 8 ranked Lafayette. We'll have highlights and analysis as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, getting down to the nitty-gritty here for the Georgia Southern Eagles. Only 2 conference series left, 11 games, but only 2 conference series left, 1 at home and 1 on the road. Your thoughts on where Georgia Southern stands? Once again, they go on the road, and life is good on the road. They win 3 out of 4 total. I guess you got the Kennesaw victory, and then they win 2 out of 3 and get great pitching performances in all 3 games. Luckily, they were able to get a few runs scratched across, and the other 2, not so much on the Friday second game, kind of different, didn't play on Saturday, weather up there. So your thoughts on how Georgia Southern did this past weekend on the road?
Well, yet another weekend series where you start out hoping to play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They've run into a little bad luck with weather this season, a couple of Friday or Saturday doubleheaders. The good news for the Eagles, they continue to get solid performances out of their starting pitchers. Doubleheaders are a lot easier when you get through that first game, only having to go 1 or 2 pitchers deep in the bullpen, not having to throw a lot of pitches, throw a lot of innings. They started off with a bang against Monroe, 13 runs in the first game. A lot of that, though, due to Monroe's lack of starting pitching, a lot of wild pitches, some opportunistic hitting there by the Eagles. That all dried up in the second game, a 2-1 loss. Luckily for the Eagles, though, they keep their string of performing well on the road alive and well. They've now won every single conference road series that they've had this season. They bounced back on Sunday to get the 4-1 win. Hopefully they can use that to build some momentum against South Alabama, who's been dominating the conference.
And the good thing is the conference tournament is not here this year. It's here next year. So if they're doing well on the road, maybe that bodes well for the Eagles as they're back on the road again. And they're on the road this weekend. You mentioned it, going to South Alabama before coming back home for a 3-game series with Clemson. Your thoughts on how important this series is right here?
I think it's important just to build some confidence the way that the standings are right now. Georgia Southern looking like they're in pretty good shape to at least be in that top 8 and make the conference tournament. Not a whole lot of upward mobility possible, a couple of tiebreakers not going the Eagles' way right now. They'd have to do a little bit of work, finish very strong with a tough final 6 conference games to be able to get up into that 5, 4, maybe 3 seed. I guess it's still possible. But against South Alabama, 18-3 so far in the conference, they could clinch this weekend with the right number of outcomes against Georgia Southern. Some other games going certain ways. But I think that this is important for the Eagles just to see how they match up. South Alabama, some of the best pitching in the conference, some of the best hitting in the conference. Chances are that whoever wins in the tournament is going to have to go through South Alabama. If Georgia Southern wants to be there on that final weekend in San Marcos, chances are they're going to have to deal with South Alabama not only this weekend, but in a couple of weeks.
All right, well, another Georgia Southern team facing the number 1 team in their conference was the Georgia Southern softball team. Not only were they playing the top team in their conference, but one of the top teams in the entire nation. I think everybody got really excited and giddy about them beating South Carolina at South Carolina. And while that was a big win, a victory over Lafayette, who came in as ranked number 8 in the nation, would actually be a better win. It's rare that a conference victory is better than a SEC victory, but in this case it was. They did manage to win 1 of 3 against Lafayette. And that's huge because then when you go into the tournament, you can say, we beat them. We know that this is a possibility.
They beat them. They're one of only 2 Sun Belt teams to get a win against the Raging Cajuns this season. And as we've mentioned throughout the season, the Sun Belt, in terms of softball, it's a little bit better across the board in sports as opposed to the Southern Conference where the Eagles came from. But in softball especially, you're going to see some conference teams that are much better than the non-conference opponents. And the Eagles, they said going into this season that last year was more of a fluke, some injuries, just a bad first season in the Sun Belt. They expected to get right back into the thick of things. I don't know how many other teams believed it, but the Eagles are showing it on the field. 1 out of 2 at home, or 1 out of 3 at home. Maybe not the best outcome that you could possibly hope for, but against the competition they were playing, that's exactly what the Eagles needed to really affirm their spot as a dangerous team in the tournament.
We've mentioned throughout the season how good Dixie Rayleigh's been on the mound. She was lights out once again, only allowed 3 hits against a team like Lafayette. That's pretty impressive. And then offensively, the Eagles with a couple home runs, but aside from that, they had 10 hits in the game on Sunday, and they really had opportunities, left a lot of runners on base, but we're still able to pick up the victory. We have some highlights to prove it. Let's get out and see some highlights from Eagle Field. The Georgia Southern softball team hosting number 8 ranked Lafayette Sunday after dropping 2 games Saturday. Things look good for the home team. 2 out. Taylor Rogers, the single to center. That's followed by Morgan Robinson, the single to right. Rogers held at second. Next up, Hannah Farrell singles to left. But Raging Cajun pitcher Alex Stewart with the inning-ending strikeout to get out of the jam. Meanwhile, her counterpart, Eagles' Dixie Rayleigh, holding the Cajun bats in check, getting the fielder's choice here for out number 3. And then later in the third, bases loaded, and Rayleigh induces the pop out to shallow left to end the inning. The Eagles give her some breathing room in the third as Emily Snyder sends this one up and away to left. The first run of the Eagles scoring against the Raging Cajuns the entire series, and it's 1-0. Georgia Southern, a deja vu in the fourth. This time A.J. Hamilton to center, and it's 2-0. Georgia Southern on top. Freshman Haley Carter showing her moves in the dugout here, and then a little bit later, the moves in right field as she comes through with the diving grab. Meanwhile, on the mound, Dixie Rayleigh throwing a gem, allowing only 3 hits, 1 strikeout, and here wrapping things up, the pop out as the Eagles pull off the upset, winning 2-0. All right, next up for the softball team, a big 3-game series on the road at Georgia State. Important one for them because if they can win all 3, it looks like they might be able to secure the number 3 seed in the tournament with South Alabama and Lafayette pretty much locking down 1 and 2.
Yeah, that would be huge in terms of just avoiding some of those top teams for as long as possible. I know the Eagles aren't afraid to play them. They've definitely proven that they can hang with the best in the conference, but when it's do or die, you'd much rather, get a couple of wins under your belt before you have to go take on another nationally ranked top 10 team.
All right, well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.